Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thanks so much for dropping by. Hmm. So, today I'm going to talk about one of, um, and for me, one of the most fascinating aspects of what Bruno Groening taught. Simultaneously, it's one of my least favorite topics because it's very abstract and theoretical. Not so much theoretical, it's just abstract and it's not so much practical. Almost everything that Bruno Groening taught and spoke about was very simple, direct, practical, um, how to play the game of life from a spiritual point of view. And so, what we're going to talk about is a little, in a sense, you could say, the history of the earth from a spiritual point of view. And Thank you, Melanie. So I find it utterly fascinating, and it's just a little bit different from most of the, in general, way that Bruno Groening taught. Yet it's completely connected because it has to do with good and evil and stepping away from God. In essence, it's kind of like taking all the principles that Bruno Groening spoke of, being connected to God, separating from God, aligning with God, aligning with evil, and sort of applies that to Bruno's understanding of life here on Earth. This is also a follow up video. I recently gave a talk on what are we, where are we, when are we, what are we to do? And I realized I'd left out some very important details from the when. So I'm going to kind of finish that up. Hi, Arcantor. Thanks for joining in. So before we dive into this material, let's, as I said, which is a little abstract, a little not the most practical material, let's practice for a few minutes. Let's call ourselves to order, as Bruno Groening said. Firmly separate ourselves from all evil, all problems, handing it over to God or to Bruno. Deciding that we want to be healthy, we want to live orderly, good lives. And then recognizing the need for God's help in that. And so now let's take in some of God's healing energy to help us in this path of life and to help heal us and free us from all evil. And the way to do this is to sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, back not slouched over, not tensed upright, but in a relaxed upright position. Hands on your legs, palms facing upwards. And then close your eyes and think of something that makes you happy. And then begin to observe your body, taking in the good energy that God is always sending, that it's just our job to receive. Observing your body with the will to absorb this good energy, to charge up our batteries. Observing the body, having the intention to be connected to God and to absorb good healing energy. noticing what you feel. Well, hello, Catherine. Thanks for joining in, and welcome to everyone. Catherine's a friend, a local friend here in my town who just tuned in and haven't seen her in a while. Thank you for joining in. So, briefly to review, what are we? An eternal soul on a limitless journey, spending time here in this very limited body. Where are we? On this divine earth, which Bruno Groening called Mother Earth, a sacred creation. Truly, how to say, just from my view, a living being. I don't know if Bruno ever quite put it that way, but did use the term Mother Earth, and that this earth was absolutely sacred. When are we? Well, we're in the 21st century, but how did we get here? How did the state of the world, how did the state of sort of civilization get to the place that it is now? Well, here's what Bruno Groening had to say on the topic. God created the human being beautiful, good, and healthy, which is how he wanted him to be. Originally, there was an indestructible bond between God and human beings, and there was only love, harmony, and health. All was one. But when the first person listened to the voice, listened to the evil which spoke from beyond this unity, and did what it said, the connection was severed, and a great chasm developed between God and the human being. There is no connection. On his own, a human being, no matter how devout, no matter how much he prays, will constantly be attacked on his life's path by evil and dragged down into the depths. So, to my knowledge, didn't say when this happened, but that once here on this earth, things were very different than how they are now. That there was a sense of unity and harmony between and really union between God and human beings, and that was lost through listening to what he calls this voice, the evil voice, which spoke outside the unity. Now, when I first heard this, I thought, this sounds a little far fetched, was my honest first response, until I came to understand how evil operates. How evil operates is it sends us negative thoughts and we listen to them. For example, um, we're walking down the street having the best day ever, and then the thought comes, like, I can't believe Janet hasn't called me back yet. I don't have a friend named Janet. I'm just making this up. I can't believe Janet hasn't called me back. If we say yes to that thought, then the next thought comes. She's really not a good friend. And if we say yes to that, then the next thought comes, and so forth and so on. And before you know it, our wonderful day has, if we listen to thoughts like that for a minute, our mood can go from like a 10 to a 2. And of course, that's just our mood. There are other thoughts like, and then the thoughts might be like, well, I'm going to call her up and give her a piece of my mind. So, first, evil sends us negative thoughts that decrease our feeling, our good feeling, disconnect us from God. And then we get thoughts to do unharmonious action. And that's why Bruno Groening called us to observe each thought and realize which side it's coming from. Is this a thought from God, or is this a thought from the adversary? And to not just say yes to every thought that appears in our mind. So this very simple example illuminates, illuminates how Bruno Groening said how, in essence, the fall of human beings occurred. Is that the first humans listened to this voice and then acted on it. So let's spend a little time and reflect on this, both sort of as a historical event when there was unity until this voice was listened to, but also sort of on a small scale as a daily recurrence. If we listen to negative thoughts, if we say yes to something that's not true and not good, it's only going to take us to not true and not good places. So let's spend a little time reflecting on this, continuing to take in the energy, being mindful of our thinking. Noticing what you feel. Taking in, absorbing this good energy. And Bruno said when we're full of good energy, then it's easier to repel these negative thoughts. Here's another description of what Bruno said happened. Centuries ago, man went on the path away from nature, gave up the belief in our Lord God. Everyone believed that he alone could maintain. We are on this earth now. We'll manage now as we see fit. And everyone thinks we know how to help ourselves. But I let you know that no one can be helped without our Lord God. So here, Bruno gives a little more clarity that it has to do with this sense of arrogance and false independence that human beings thought, we don't need God anymore. Where are we? We're on this earth. Everything's great. We don't need God. And as Bruno points out over and over, this is just not true. So again, not that I'm aware of that he says when this happened, just that it happened quite some time ago. So fast forward to 1949 when Bruno Groening emerged and started teaching. Now, he didn't talk about it a lot, but one of the things that Bruno Groening said is that there was so much evil on this earth, and evil was getting so strong that it was literally seeking to destroy the earth. And I couldn't find the exact quote, but Bruno said that the earth was threatening to burst, that from all this evil, um, the literally he said the world was in danger, and so what he said is that he said, "I am alive, so that mankind can continue living." Again, this isn't something he talked about a lot, but he indicated that his coming here was actually to prevent the destruction of the earth from evil. He said things such as, the earth threatens to tear, but I am stronger than evil. I know how to contain the tear. And he said, I've put a ring around this earth, in essence, that would keep it safe. And he also said that, and he said he put a ring of spiritual energy around the earth that anyone, even if they hadn't heard the name Bruno Groening, but who was seeking the good, could call on this energy and that it would be made available. So these are just statements Bruno Groening made. I'm not a spiritual master. I can't sit here and say, "Oh yes, this is true," or I can't confirm those from my own experience. All I can say is, through the teachings of Bruno Groening, I've experienced many healings in my body, and I know many other people who have. I'm still alive because of them. So I don't blindly accept everything that Bruno Groening says, and I do just tend to assume that he's telling the truth. That's how I approach such things. Like I don't know if the earth was threatening to burst. I just know that Bruno Groening says that it was and says that he contained it. I absolutely know for a fact that Bruno Groening is stronger than evil. That's something that I can't say for a fact, that I just implicitly trust and feel that I know in the depths of my bones. But some of these things, as I said at the beginning, are very sort of abstract. So let's reflect on all this and um, continue to take in this energy and see how you feel about some of these things that Bruno Groening said about the earth threatening to burst, about evil seeking to destroy this world. I'm very convinced that's a fact. That Bruno Groening put a ring of energy around this earth to both protect it and that so that anyone who was seeking the good would have access to divine energy. Let's sit with all this and reflect some as we take in good energy. Noticing what you feel. Taking in the good. Hmm. So it gets even a little more interesting. So Bruno said, I call humanity to the great um, correction, turnaround, reversal. The German word has different meanings, those are some of them. To just completely turn around, turn our way of life and our way of being really around. He said that often. And then occasionally he would talk about what would happen if humanity as a whole didn't turn around. And he called that the great correction, that God and or nature would somehow intervene. And to my knowledge, he didn't go into a lot of details about what that would look like, or and if anyone has more information on that, please let me know. You can read about it in the book Powers of the Spirit, and I'm going to read a little bit that he said. Human beings have received from God as a gift. This is Powers of the Spirit, page 147. Human beings have received from God as a gift their inviolable free will to stand by either good or evil, even if they make life hell through their lack of understanding, greed, and vengefulness towards one another, and even threaten or annihilate the bodies of other people. This still remains at the level of guilt and retribution in the destiny they make for themselves. That is, everyone must, for as long as they do not walk the path of nonviolence, experience and carry to term in their own bodies everything they have caused or done to other people by way of evil. So before I go any further, in essence, what Bruno's saying, and please check for yourself, this is a very profound paragraph. Again, it's on page 147 of Powers of the Spirit, is that God has given human beings free will. And human beings can do wonderful things with that, or they can do awful things with that. Now, if we do awful things, the effects of that come back and we experience the effects of that in our bodies. Um, he calls that at the level of guilt and retribution. So God even, gives us free will to even kill these beautiful bodies that are a gift from God, these very sacred bodies. And when we harm ourselves and each other, there is this thing that Bruno calls guilt or retribution. Elsewhere, he calls it the law of cause and effect. So I'll continue. This laborious, lengthy, and heavy rhythm of birth and death has been in operation since human beings first abandoned the divine path, which we talked about, we read from earlier, when human beings listen to the voice outside the unity. That's what started all these problems. But as long as in the Vale of Tears it appears from the earthly and material perspective, there nevertheless remains. Oh, excuse me, let me back up. But so long as in this Vale of Tears, as it appears from the earthly and material perspective, there nevertheless remains, when viewed from the spiritual perspective, one little spark of hope that people will turn around. And so long as life on earth as a whole is not in danger, then God's forbearance continues. It is only in the case when any development toward the good is out of the question, the aforementioned great correction becomes avoidable. So as long as there's, Bruno says, a little spark of hope that humanity as a whole can turn around, then this event, which again Bruno didn't give much details about, called the Great Correction, is held off so long as there's hope. And this was in 1959, and Bruno Groening said there was so much evil that human beings could barely live anymore. And it's an interesting philosophical question. Is there more evil now than there was then? We each may have our own opinion on that. So these are the facts as I understand them, as Bruno shared, that life on this earth was almost intolerable in 1959, and that there's still hope. And as long as there's still hope that humanity as a whole can turn around, then God and nature don't have to intervene. Or he said that life on earth as a whole is not in danger. I can't even fathom what that could look like, but somehow some person very possessed by evil comes up with a plan to destroy all life on earth, then according to Bruno Groening, some kind of intervention would happen. So it can be a bit of a heavy topic. And then there's also the beauty of there's still hope It's easy to look around the world and watch the news and feel utterly hopeless. And according to Bruno Groening, the great correction hasn't occurred yet, so there's still hope. So please, let's sit with this, reflect on this. I invite people to do their own reading and research. And again, if anyone has more information or more direct quotes that from Bruno Groening on this topic, please let me know. Let's continue to take in this energy. Hmm. Taking in the good. Noticing what we feel. Welcoming the peaceful quiet. So this can be a very heavy topic. And here's something else Bruno Groening said on it. Whether, when, and how such an event occurs, meaning the Great Correction, only God knows. Therefore, I emphasize once again, the more human beings serve the good, the more unlikely it is that such a decisive event will occur. So it's easy to hear all this information and be like, well, what do I do? Well, we serve the good. As Catherine just wrote, we use our free will to act with integrity and love. We decide not just to act with love, we decide, I want to serve life. I want to be in service to God and goodness itself. So we'll begin to wrap up. So I'd like to thank everyone for dropping by. As I said at the beginning, this is one of the topics I find most fascinating: the history of the earth from a spiritual perspective, and the history of civilization. How did we as a species come to this place where we are? And, in terms of Bruno Groening's teachings, I feel like most of the things Bruno Groening says, I can verify through practicing them and finding out the truth of them. And this one's a little harder for us to verify in our own experience. But yet I trust it deeply. And there's this other sense of we live in a very decisive time in history, whether it's There's something about reflecting on this that lights my fire to serve the good. And I hope that's the impact it has on others as well. So let's close with a minute or so of silence, asking to be shown, how can I serve the good? How can we serve the good, serve God, serve life? How can we contribute? Taking in this good energy, noticing what you feel, asking for the highest blessing for this planet. Yes, and asking, beautiful Catherine, that we all become beacons. So thank you everyone for joining in. Again, if anyone else has other quotes of Bruno's on the topic of the Great Correction, please let me know. I've shared pretty much all the information I have on it. And let's become those beacons. Let's become what we are. We are instruments of God. We are here to serve life. So let's fill ourselves up with good energy and let's do it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Take care. Much love.